Hello, and welcome to today's Magnetic Muse episode number 6, where I'm joined by Rachel Maria Bell and myself, Jessica Ann, exploring how astrology and gene keys can help us to understand our unique love blueprint. Many people think they're just unlucky in love, or that they just keep meeting the wrong person. But what I've seen again and again is that love isn't random. We are actually following a very specific emotional blueprint. We attract certain types of people, we feel the same kinds of chemistry, we hit the same breakdown points, and it can feel like, why does this keep happening to me? And what's fascinating is that both astrology and gene keys shows us that these patterns are not accidental, they're patterned into our consciousness. The gene keys Venus sequence in particular maps your entire love journey, what you're attracted to, how you think in relationships, your emotional triggers, how safe it feels to open your heart, and even the core wound that you're here to transform through love. And astrology gives us another layer of that, showing us the archetypal dynamics, the relational imprints, and the deeper psychological patterns that we carry. So today, what we're really exploring is the idea that your love life isn't something that's happening to you, it's something that's happening through you. And when you can see the pattern clearly, you can actually shift it. You can stop repeating the same cycles and start creating a completely different experience of love. We come into life with emotional patterns and relational blueprints, and we can see them clearly through astrology and gene keys. These patterns are not fate, they're invitations for consciousness. Rachel Maria Bell, thank you so much for joining me today and bringing your expertise and wealth of knowledge to this amazing conversation. So introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for inviting me. So, I'm Rachel. I have been working as an astrologer for the past 6 years, but I think astrology doesn't quite cover. That's the modality. It doesn't quite cover what I actually do and who I work with. So, I only have been working with very spiritually gifted people who see themselves and know themselves to be multidimensional beings receiving higher dimensional information and so often carrying these big, complex soul missions. And it requires completely different thinking, leadership, ways of orientating yourself, showing up for yourself, identity,
Wow.
and navigating human life and conversations and relationships. All of it, it spans into all of life. And astrology, thank goodness, is my favorite and preferred framework because it gives us access to the whole sky, the whole planetary system, the whole what are we doing as individuals and as a collective. So, yes, I'm here in capacity as astrologer, but also with that multidimensional spiritual perspective.
Amazing. And so we came together on this topic because, oh, let's charge my thing. So my because I went very, very deep into the Venus sequence. Well, I was drawn into the Venus sequence when my life brought me back into focusing deeply on a pattern that kept showing up in my intimate partnership. And 7 years before, I had consistently, from the very young age, repeated the pattern of attracting deeply abusive, violent men. And there was a certain quality to that relationship. It was always the same, where they were very, very. It was a narcissistic dynamic, and it was only when I experienced the final time when I was working as a secondary school teacher, a deputy head of a school, consultant of a school, leading a school, where I had another experience where this pattern showed up in my life. And that was the alarm bell for me. I was like, what is going on? Why am I so educated, so intelligent, so powerful in my public life, but I keep attracting this exact same emotional dynamic? And I went to Thailand and I started my shadow work and my awakening journey. And that was when I first came across the internalized information coming directly from my higher self, that I was born into this dynamic so that I could resolve this particular pattern. And I went deeply into this journey of exploring that. This was before Gene Keys. So 7 years go by and I choose celibacy because I really am on a journey of individuation. I'm on a journey of self actualization and really learning who I am. And what was interesting is that one of the things that I realized, one of the patterns that was real for me, was that I was deeply avoidant. I was attracting these avoidant energies that were much darker than me because there was other things. But ultimately, the crux of it was I would choose men that I would never commit to because I was avoidant, because I didn't want that, because I felt enmeshed and engulfed. And so I resolved all of that. And then in 2024, I decided I wanted sacred union. This ache came through me. This knowing was like, it was just so, so strong, deeply higher self led. And it was, okay, you're ready to open up to sacred union. And I sat down and I literally was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be in relationship. And I don't know how to connect with a healthy partner. So I had a self-trust issue at that point, I realized, and literally Goddess came to me. I have a specific guide called Goddess Sifu, and it was just, the downloads were so clear. She's like, literally, I am going to guide you directly in how to cultivate and live from your high feminine energy. So what happened was that January, I'm standing at a bus stop. I decide I've taken a year out. I'm in a 7 year in numerology, and I take a year out and I say, right, um, I'm going to go and do some supply work. So I'm standing at the bus stop waiting for this bus, and this man comes off the bus and hears me speak to the bus driver and say, "Oh, does this go to wherever?" Anyway, he walks off and he comes back and he's like, "Hey, I just heard you ask this question and I can give you the answer." So he uses that he's a fourth line as well and strikes a conversation. And it was really nice. He had love in his eyes. It was very kind. Anyway, next thing you know, the next day he turns up again and he's on the same bus. So we meet every morning and he's like, "Oh, hello." And it was raining. Really lovely guy. And he holds the umbrella up for me for the whole time until my bus comes and we're talking. And it was like really, really nice. At that time, an ex, a ghost of lovers past, that's what I'm calling them, because there's three turned up and then a bonus fourth, all came to mirror to me what needed to evolve in order for me to meet my sacred partnership or to be prepared for this sacred union. So I I get this call from this guy, Ghost of Lovers Past number 3, on the 13th of January. I am gobsmacked that he's called me after 10 years because the last time we met, I'd fallen deeply in love. We'd gone to Thailand. I never saw him again once he left the plane. Once we walked away from the airport together, I never saw him again. And I was called a week later by his wife, which I didn't know he had. And his story was at the time that I'm going back to raise my son, who was 1 year old, and that's why. Anyway, his wife found out because he had left, and I don't know whether this was on purpose or not, but he had left the tickets out, so it had my contact details, like my name, the hotel, everything was on there. The booking information. So she'd found that. Anyway, I find out that he is married, and so the 4 months that we've spent together, what felt like love was probably just my intensity and my attraction, um, it all was just like, okay, this is wild. So I went on a deep journey of mourning. And then what happened was I attracted the two same baseline, two separate men, same pattern, abusive, narcissistic, got robbed. Many things happened, many things which I won't go into, beaten, blah, blah, blah. And so he calls me, and my root chakra and my sacral chakra explode. Like I've never felt life force energy going through it. Now I'm 11 in numerology. I'm, you know, I'm on this spiritual path, and I'm getting synchronicities. I'm thinking this is like a soulmate. This is like, and I'm creating the fantasy now. I'm creating this fantasy that he's come back. We're going to live happily ever after. This is, but I knew it was also initiation. I was very clear that I knew it was an initiation. The words that kept going through my mind was rewire your desire, rewire your desire. So I knew that my guides and my higher self were guiding me to say, you are being taken through an initiation to observe something in this connection. So I'm given two men. I'm not attracted to the one who's inviting me and initiating and investing his energy into me. He's inviting me to dates. He's planning. He's decisive. He's clear. He's in his healthy masculine energy. He's investing in me in terms of helping me with my personal training. He's just everything I said I wanted in terms of, but was I attracted to that? No. I'm deeply in this guy, emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, hot and cold. And I start to get really clear guidance like, oh, isn't it interesting that that this is very familiar to you? Isn't it interesting that, and then anyway, all the things. And so I was starting to open up to him thinking that he's like my soulmate and blah blah blah. And he's like pulling back, pulling back. And he's not reaching forward. He's not meeting me. He's not coming towards, and I'm pursuing him. So I'm starting to see these patterns in myself, this chasing, this
Yes.
earning love, this proving. So I get to see it in real time, and it's wild that I get to, and all the while I'm hearing rewire your desire, which is actually part of the receptivity codes, and it's kind of like a separate thing. But it's ultimately the point what I learned was that I was being attracted from my nervous system, attachment system, which was
Yeah.
normal to me. So
Yeah.
please, the SQ is our spiritual quotient, and it's your inner child's frequency of love. And it shows how safe it feels for you to be truly open, intimate, and seen without armor. And what's interesting is that all of this was, I'm Jinky 59, which is from dishonesty to to intimacy to transparency. And so this whole evolution of consciousness and all the patterns became really, really clear to me. And I started evolving through this, and I'm still going. That's how amazing this journey has been. So I got to look back and see how over the many years that I was always using sexuality or seduction, a mask. People could never get close to me. My heart had so many defenses and mechanisms. I wasn't always honest in my connections, despite having deep connections. I was very happy to keep men at a very length, and I worked 100-hour weeks. My career was my focus, and this that whole experience. This time, I never saw myself as anxious, but because of him being and very avoidant and also not attainable, it wasn't that I was anxious. I was going against my intuition, but I also saw the part of me for the first time that wanted to earn love and that wanted to
Yeah.
win, you know? So let's let me now move to you to say, from an astrological perspective, where do you see the clearest indicators of someone's repeating relational patterns?
So there are three things that jump out at me, not only from your story, which is fascinating to connect up the patterns and the gene key and all of that. When you talk about, okay, so the three that I want to talk about in no particular order are Venus, Neptune, and Chiron. Okay. Now there are every single planet, of course, is going to have an effect on your love life, on your desire field. There are so many things. I mean, even down to the asteroids. Like the asteroids actually are named after the divine feminine goddesses. So, for example, Juno, who was the wife of Jupiter, she shows you the kind of man you want. Now, she could be sitting there, like in my chart, she's sitting there in Aquarius, totally on her own, totally unaspected, looking for this complete weirdo, when the rest of my chart's like, oh, Venus in Taurus, hey, just cook for me, it'll all be all right. So there can be some disparate coding that we need to get our heads around and to really work out what the interplay is of that. However, if we start with Venus as a female being, as a woman, we are attracting through our Venus. So it's the seat of what we value in others, how we show our love, what we're doing, how we're magnetizing, and those unconscious charm signals that we're giving out. And we've been doing that since we were born, right? So it's like, how are we getting love? How is our inner child getting love? And we don't know we're doing it. We're just like, like attracting through that. Yeah. So by becoming conscious about raising the frequency of our Venus, we can see how it plays out through our lives. And what I tend to look at is, first of all, the sign. So, you know, what sign of the zodiac is your Venus in? Therefore, that gives the characteristics and the flavor of how you're being expressed as your Venus. And then the aspects caused by other planets. So, as an example from my own chart, my Uranus, so how I receive higher dimensional um, information, that is exactly opposite my Venus. So, that has been one of my biggest woundings in my relationship. So, you know, my Venus is over here just going, hey, I'm in Taurus. I just want to be comfy. I just want to settle down. I just want to be loyal. I'd never cheat. I don't want a guy who would cheat on me. Just, you know, make everything cozy and lovely. And then over here, there's this complete freak code of all of the multidimensional stuff going on. And it doesn't sit right with the person who's just ready to lean back and go, just cook for me, because there's actually so much going on, like this threatening level of IQ and like expanded, but you know, mental awareness of higher dimensional stuff, that a guy's just like literally sitting across from the breakfast table from you. He's like, you're coming out of ceremony. What is this? So there's that jarring. So we'd be looking at, you know, oppositions where there's some sort of jarring, where you're dealing with extremes. When I read charts of people who have their Venus and Mars and Moon in complementary signs to each other, they tend to have an easier time in relationship. It's like they know who they are on an inner level, and they know that what they're putting their energy into, Mars, and how they want to receive, Venus, and how they feel inside, Moon, it all just adds up. And they're looking at other people going, why are you making relationships so hard? I do believe, from looking at so many charts of spiritually awakened people who are carrying particular codes for new paradigm leadership, I do feel that we have special I'm going to say special. It's like we've chosen on a soul level specific challenges that make something really hard. So we have to dive into what the heck is going on here, because that relating piece, there's nothing that gets you more than a relationship, right?
Exactly. It's the best spiritual path there is to opening your heart, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
directly feeds into client relationships. So the other one to briefly mention is Neptune, and this is huge because with Neptune is the higher heart. It's the higher octave of Venus, and it's spiritual love. So it's love for all of us. It's love that we have for each person as a unique divine expression of consciousness. That part of us that knows your oversoul is doing its thing in this in this body, in this identity, in this lifetime, and we want to be able to raise the frequency of everybody's Neptune. We'd love it if everybody loved everybody, right? So inside of us, we've got this we've got this original soul's blueprint, this original coding that says, I know that I'm here on a spiritual path. Of course, I'm going to have that amnesia and have all the veils. But inside of us, we know that we're here to have this spiritual experience. And then, as you mentioned, when you have that thing take over you and you're like, right, okay, I'm ready for sacred union. How do I do that? How do I make me sovereign? What would make me truly, truly in my own power and magnetic to the right divine counterpart? And that's a whole different level. That's a whole different thing. Right? And Neptune codes show us where that is. Also, Neptune, there's a fine line between deception, illusion, addiction,
Yeah.
and it's that inability to really meet the truthful in emotions and be utterly present and truthful with the raw in the moment. Who am I being? Catching that pattern, like you said. And being really intentional, because if you're not able to do that work on yourself and go, where have I messed up here? Or what is this pattern I'm repeating? Then we keep meeting the same. We will meet Neptune in its different forms, like denial,
Yeah.
deception. So somebody's lying to us and we don't know because they're telling us one story. They're saying everything's great. You're the bee's knees. You're absolutely wonderful. And because that's what we want to hear, we're like, yeah, thanks. But you
Yes.
feel underneath the surface, you're like, there's some kind of weird disconnect here. And then later you find out you've been lied to and there's like this big clangor of a thing. That's Neptune.
Yes. My Venus is 50 in Gene Keys and Gate 50. Is Venus is in 50, but I also have Venus twice in Pluto. So 50, the theme is huge for me. And when I look at in the Venus sequence, Gate 50 is in the EQ, which is the emotional patterning in relationships, revealing the unconscious patterns um or dynamics that play out in love and over and over and over until you see them. So it's going back to that thing of I feel that we are actually placed. So in Gene Keys, it tells us where we have internalized certain beliefs, certain ideas and perceptions and nervous system imprints based on our inner child, based on patterns, based on etc., subconscious beliefs and assumptions about who we are, our value, our attachment from different age points. So for the SQ, it's between the ages of 0 and 7, right? So that really powerful phrase. And then, so when your attachment wiring is formulating, so then you have one of them is from the ages of 7 to 14, and then it's 14 to 21. So what that leads me to think about and really want the audience to understand is that when you are ready to and your soul is calling you for conscious partnership, because that's the kind of people that I work with. It's literally not about, for me, the work I do at this stage is not how do I get the man, it's how do I become internally whole and congruent and sovereign and develop my inner union within myself. So I am not moving from self-worth, a lack of self-worth. So I'm not moving from these patterns of consciousness that I've created to move through so that I can actually move from a place of deep, deep power and deep unconditional love for myself and for others, but with discernment, with those boundaries. And the point I'm seeing is that I feel that we have literally come into the exact dynamics in our family of origin that we needed to be able to navigate this pathway through to to its evolved energy. How do you feel about that?
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree with you. And what I often say is that we will live and play in the opposite energy to the one. It's almost like an extra polar extreme. Like people will be playing in this particular energy, and until you can see the pattern, you can't break it.
Yeah.
And we're actually meant to be, our power is over here. And of course, Gene Keys is brilliant at explaining that and providing that, yeah, not only an explanation, but really a roadmap to the detail of it. Um, yeah, I do see this so many times with clients where there are collective patterns that we are overcoming, but we get to see them so intimately through that portion of the individual coding that we're carrying. So, for example, I feel wonderful and expanded the fact that I dare to go anywhere in terms of my remote viewing, my astral travel, my realm viewing. I'm okay with that. I want to stay open and curious, and I want to blast away anything that dims us into not being completely fully aware, awake, and daring to travel where we want to in any realms. I mean, inner, outer, everywhere, right? So, of course, I chose circumstances where I've got parents who are like totally, utterly brainwashed by like the whole religion and mainstream, just about as mainstream as you can get. So that little Rachel's asking a million questions and I'm just getting really weird looks back. So, of course, I kept meeting the same pattern of people going, "What are you even saying? Who are you?" So that I could shrink back and feel terrible, so that I could go, "Wait, I don't wanna feel terrible, like I'm being suppressed." Right? I want to do the opposite. I wanna burst out and break free.
Mm.
So we do attract those patterns. That's just one example. I'm just giving that
Mm.
example of mine, but it then mimics that collective pattern. So it creates that force where if I dare to speak up and say something that may be emotionally or spiritually or mentally challenging to someone else, good. That's my purpose. I'm supposed to be disrupting multiple layers of distortion and all those layers of religious control and patriarchal control, and it spills out everywhere into every part of society, right? And that's how brainwashing works because we don't know what's happening.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's really, really powerful because actually one of my mottos and mantras in my business, in my life, that came through again over this journey was individual responsibility, collective success. So it's the
Mhm.
microcosm, the macrocosm. On an internal and individual level, we're doing this work, and then it ripples out into the collective and transforms it on that level as well. Actually, that's really, really true for the projector. In particular, the spiritual role of the projector is, yeah, is to work on this macro level. So,
And I just want to say as well that I feel the way that you speak about your journey and use your own example in a detailed way, that's to my mind, that is new paradigm leadership. Being so truthful about the embodied journey that has been lived and the lessons that have been learnt, the patterns that have been caught, and what that journey then looked like, and what was what was the pattern. For some people, it may be, how were you trapped and how did you break free?
mm,
Or how were you abused and made to feel very small? And then what did you do on the reverse side of it? How did you make yourself big? There's always like this reversal to be done.
yes, exactly. And I think this is the beautiful outcome of today. And for anyone who's listening, that is in that moment, or in that threshold moment of I'm ready to step into my priestess energy, or I'm ready to step into my initiation and to burst out, we have these frameworks. We actually, it doesn't have to be. I mean, I've been developing an amazing father wounds module that I think I probably will deliver as a one-off thing outside of the receptivity codes as well, because it is so, so good. But it's like, I think I made this up the other day. It's take what we're doing, what this gives people is we get to take the universal and make it individual. So these universal attachment issues or patterns, or a man breadcrumbs you, or like, think symptoms. When we look at symptoms, attachment, say anxious attachment symptoms, or um not wanting to uh stay in a dynamic, but you find yourself waiting because you think he might change. Like, these are symptoms. So we have these universal symptoms that all of us can speak about if we've experienced them. But what I love is how we can take that universal and make it very individual. And so we can tailor and zoom right in to your consciousness and to evolve it and work on an energetic level. And the thing about the gene keys is it's where my work has always guided me to the whole body. What would I call this body again? Like, so the mental body, the emotional body, the energetic body. I, over the last 7 years, have been guided to develop my methodologies to work on each level and layer of the etheric bodies. And so when I finally, and this is the thing, when you finally come to Gene Keys and you go, oh, it's because I've developed the tools to be able to actually, it helps someone to rise through this and embody, not on a mental level alone, but actually working through each and every level of consciousness, layer and
Yeah.
consciousness, you see. And then when I saw the patterns, I was like, this is absolutely amazing.
And that's where the power is, isn't it? It's in the changed behavior, in the life, in the life of the individual, and in the daily decisions that you make to show up and do something different, to keep catching yourself out.
Let me see if there's anything that I'd love to ask. So I'll look at the core wound. So in Gene Keys, the idea is, and it is actually true because I've lived it, I'm a third line. So I'm gonna say I've gone through trial and error. I would martyr it and rip it up and say this is absolute bullshit if I didn't experience it from my real embodied experience. And so there are many things like organized religion, there are elements of truth, there are elements that there is a lot of manipulation and control, which is not true. And my mum was a priest in the Church of England, but only much later in life. So this wasn't the true case for me growing up. We had a very interesting foundational life. She came to this much later in life after experiencing huge amounts of challenge in her own life. So that was her pathway, I guess, finding God. She isn't as weird as some people are in that context. But what was interesting for me, well, she's not weird at all, actually. But what was interesting for me is obviously how I then went off to have direct connection to source, or direct, found my own connection to divinity. All of that to say, I would never use human design, gene keys, or any of this stuff as dogma, as it is this thing, right? All I want to say, though, is that I know that I did bring a wound into this incarnation, and I have been allowed, or been have found myself on the path of evolving that for myself and for the collective and for planetary transformation as a new paradigm leader. And part of that, we find it when I do business by design, or give people their genius readings. We're looking at vocation because that's the core talent, but it is at first a wound. So mine is Gene Key 40. It's moving out of exhaustion, overgiving, depletion, codependency, again, all linked to proving worth. And this is why in my other podcast, The Sovereign CEO, and the work that I do with entrepreneurs, again, to expand in business, it all comes down to the same thing. It's about how do these patterns play out? Because what I
Yes.
found was when my nervous system was wired for breadcrumbs from men, I was receiving breadcrumbs in my money because it's the same absolute pattern wiring in that nervous system. So you evolve
100%.
right. So you evolve it there, you elevate it everywhere. One
Yeah.
one pattern, multiple domains in your life.
Yes.
And so for me, Gene Key 40 is my vocation. It's my biggest talent. I'm here to help people to stop working from depletion, stop living this distorted masculine template, learn to create from flow over force, learn, oh, okay, I can master my energetics through my human design. That gives me the clues, the territory, the map, and I can create in a sustainable way. That's in my creativity, in how I create wealth. But also, how is this pattern showing up in how why was I working 100-hour weeks? Why was I trying to prove my worth? Oh, because there's this deep belief that I have to earn love. I have to work hard for the money. I have to prove my value. And once you get that, we get we dissolve it, integrate it, evolve it everywhere. So in Gene Keys, it works in the Venus sequence in the theme is in the vocation sphere. For you, what placements tend to show where someone might overgive, overstay, or feel like they have to earn love? If that shows up, because does that show up in their chart?
Yes, it does. Well, Chiron is the wound,
Mm.
but we also call it like the wounded healer. It's a little bit limited because what I will always say about your Chiron placement is that it really hurts. That's what wounds do. They hurt to the core. And, the mythological archetypal story of Chiron is absolutely horrific. Go look it up. It's horrendous. And so it is actually our deepest suffering where we just want to go, no, no, I don't want to work on it because it's too hard. It's where we it's where we shut down, where we avoid. And of course, those are the places where if you're avoiding, then you're not even getting to it. So Chiron shows us that. It shows us whereabouts it plays out in the house side. Sorry, the house shows us which area of life it's showing up. And then the sign will be connected with what it is. So Chiron has been moving through Aries for quite a while now, and there are a lot of people going through their Chiron return. So people who have their Chiron in Aries, it's very generalized, but it will be connected with not feeling like you can show up as your individual self in your identity. So that's the Aries Chiron. I think you may have Taurus Chiron. You're
Yeah.
in the same generation as me. So that is directly about self-worth. Taurus is what we have. It's our value, our self-worth. But what do we feel like we're giving and what can we receive? Or are we over giving?
Yeah.
So it's like constantly in depletion. So
Yeah.
it's bringing back that sovereign energy into the self to nourish the self and teaching from that place.
That's so beautiful. I'm feeling just the warmth of absolute joy because again, I feel like once you get this, it it really it just becomes, even though you do still go through grief and pain, it becomes a much more powerful uh, mm, approach. It just becomes much more exciting when you go, actually, this could be the game. It's like a game of life where I can actually just move through this. Um,
Yes, yes. Well, catching the pattern helps you resolve things as well, because just as an example, like depending on where your Chiron is, like mine is in the sixth house. So that's what happens in terms of your daily work.
yeah,
So I'm not feeling like, I'd not been feeling good about my work. Well, of course I didn't. In my first graduate job, I was attacked to the point of death. Of course, that horrific workplace abuse showed up for the next 25 years until the Holy Spirit said to me, "You have always been doing your job." And I went, "Wait a minute, I had a different assignment on Earth. I was not meant to survive and produce in a patriarchal, dying end of capitalism shit world." Of course, it was like, make the reversal, right? You're here to do and teach and be something else. So it will show us where it shows up. Now, if somebody has their Chiron in 7th house of relationships, it will show up in your relationships. If somebody has it, say, in their 9th house, it may show up in how they feel about their worthiness in their spirituality, or they may feel they've got something to teach, but they can't teach it, or something to write and they can't write it. So
Yeah.
it will show where that deeper core wound lives.
Yes, and once you've got an awareness of it, you start to receive how to move through it, navigate, change, evolve, initiate yourself through it. Just a last thing before we wrap up, when we look at Chiron from the human design perspective, my Chiron is 8, Jinky 8, and uh, Gate 8, which is really interesting because it's about visibility, it's about originality, it's about and so much, I was a musician and a singer, and all my life people have said, "You're like Amy Winehouse." And I'm thinking, "Well, I came out before Amy Winehouse." Like, but I'm always so it's like mimicry is the shadow here where you don't express yourself uniquely. So always trying to find your actual original voice, your thought leadership perspective, which is why it's taken so long as well for me to get to this point that I'm at now to really lead. Because actually, sometimes you do need that depth, you need that time to live and to be able to form your thought leadership. I thought I had it at first in education. In fact, I did. I'd gone deep into my mastery. I was at the top of my game. I was ready to change the world and change the education system. And then I had my awakening and it was that's not my soul's work. That's not the work. And interestingly, Gene Key 8 is also about the way it's challenging how education creates sheep and how the system shuts down creative unique genius because it creates through and but that is actually what I challenged the whole time. I actually taught people critical thinking. I created pedagogy so I saw Chiron working in its highest expression in that context, but it wasn't always a thing, but it's been a challenge. So I guess, is there anything else that we want the world to know towards the end of today's podcast? And we can always come back and do it again.
I just think picking up on what you just said there, right near the end, um, I see that in people's lives and charts all the time. You know, we are not designed to do one thing. Our life is hopefully nice and long and many decades. And, you know, the fact that you were in your mastery within the context of education, and same here with like teaching, you know, I loved teaching. I loved being in the classroom. I loved teaching critical thinking, but we had that background to then bring
Yeah.
critical thinking to spirituality, which has had, you know, historically, has been suppressed, mocked, called woo woo, and been very cheapened and made into something it's not. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of mockery style comments, you know, where I've basically been treated as though, oh, you're going to tell somebody's fortune. Mate, actually, it's a massive thing being able to see future timelines and past timelines because all we have is the eternal moment of now. Like, don't come at me as though you're having a go at Gypsy Rose Lee down the pier because she doesn't deserve it and I don't deserve it. So shut up. You know,
Yes.
but what I do see is that, you know, we live in these different phases of different expressions as we're learning and practicing our gifts like we both did through the education system before then bursting out into what the soul's really here for.
What I love is this is one of the things that have drawn me to you as well. I know you're a 4-1 and I'm a 1-3. And so that one line resonance, in fact, you're my fractal because ones and fives are my fractals. So there was that resonance as well. Like truly, like with the fractal thing, this is the beauty again about not anti-marketing, but actually as spiritual entrepreneurs, not following like tactics and stuff, actually just standing in your power, in your message, in your thought leadership, your transmission. You are a transmitter. And when you stand with that, oh, I just got chills. Oh, you will, as you speak, you're literally people who are your fractals feel it on a deep cellular level. There is nothing to convince. Your
Mm.
people feel it. And so I felt that with you. But I also just love how concise and how you speak. And that is from education. But for me, and I don't know about your programs or how you deliver all of them, but I had a client, a projector as well, who came to me. Well, we did marketing. She was a projector. We did her marketing, her branding, and beautiful human design, Jinky style. And she came the other day, we were just nailing her positioning again and what her message, again, coming out and what's the real message that I'm here to express. And she said, one thing I love about you is that you're an educator. Because when I was back in 2021, I developed these content creation programs where it was literally proper teaching. Here is the core concept. Here is the skill. Here's how you know on levels of success that you've met this skill. Here is the example. Here's the actual way, the thinking steps to approach it and develop this and then show up using it. So teaching the elements of something that is super valuable. And I think well, I've always been great at curriculum design anyway. It's literally one of my gifts. But when we look at Gene Key 9, that precision and that being able to reduce complex ideas and organize them and sequence them and deliver it in a way that people can embody, grasp, and use, that is very unique. And it's really important, I think, in so many of the coaching spaces. I have bought so many coaching programs where I'm like, I've actually had to reorganize all of the information because it's just someone dropping this verbal diarrhea and it's not coherent. It's just loads of random ideas that aren't structured, sequenced, and delivered. And I'm just going to blow my own horn here and say, in the receptivity codes, what I have developed is s- frameworks, it's structure, and it's strategically taking you on a journey that I don't think people will find in other places. You might find I actually bought something, it's not to look down on other people because there's bits of gems in there, but to sit down for 2 hours and listen to someone read off a fucking slide, it's like
It's not good. I know, I've seen it. I've seen it a lot. I don't do that actually. Even though I have a lot of skill as an educator, I've had to come away from that. Part
yeah,
of my journey has been coming away from it. And, I taught in university. So where I see what I do now as being a mirror for what I was doing at the universities is I'm not the expert, you are. So
absolutely.
a final year student who's got their dissertation project, they're the one who's interested in that thing. My job is make sure they've thought about absolutely everything. So I come in with many, 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 many pointed questions and I go, test your thoughts here. What are your beliefs? What are your thoughts? How is it backed up by research? Give me all of these different ideas, but then produce something better. So it's like I'm working with the about to become a PhD student of whatever their specialism is. And I think treating people like they're in their complete and utter zone of genius and power is where I love working with people. So if somebody comes to me and wants, say, a reading and they're not at all in their power, it's not gonna be that powerful for them because I have to blast through too many layers.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. 100%. And actually, and that's why we both have sovereign in our curriculum titles because we are bringing people into self-trust, trusting their inner authority, being able to come to their own insight and not outsource. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, anytime a client tells me I don't know, I go, well, if you did know, what would it be? That's one of my favorite. And then they go, and they'll give you the answer because they do know.
They do know. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
layers, there's the layers that it's very actually, that same thing used to come up with students who and I when I looked this is very different from being in a coaching situation, and somebody thinking that they don't know because they're not coming to their own insight, that's one thing. But I used to have students who you'd say, "Okay, blah, 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 now what is it?" or whatever, and they'd go, "I don't know," because it was a default. They had been trained not to think. Honestly, that's what I saw because then you could any student, and when I used to tutor, any pupil that used to come to me that would automatically say, "I don't know," you could see that that's the training because and so, you know, being probed, being forced to actually will show me the thinking step. Think back. How does this connect to something you do know? Metacognition, you know, when that's a default habit of just not being trained to think.
What a what a crying shame. Like, oh my goodness. Ah.
Anyway, okay, so last thing, I keep saying it was the last thing. What is the thing I want people to go away with? I want you to know that you are deeply loved, you are whole, and you are powerful, and there are patterns that you have internalized and beliefs that you have taken on along the way that are not true, and they do not need to be a life sentence. You can choose your identity, select that identity at any moment in time. You can meet yourself with presence and deep, deep, deep love and change your life in an instant. And I hate to sound frivolous, but it is true because I've done it. I do it over and over again. And so I want you to know that there are, if you have chat, if you're ready for conscious partnership and you're ready for sacred union and you are tired of repeating those patterns in your intimate partnerships and you're ready to awaken your intimacy, to start building from self trust, to cultivate conscious partnership with yourself and others in business and in love, join the receptivity codes. And for Rachel, what do you want people to know and how can they get hold of you?
Well, if anybody listening is feeling that they have been mispositioned and there's more that they have to offer, there is more that they are carrying than they have been expressing and able to fulfill. That's the people I work with. And my entry place is Sovereign Calibration, which is a 30-day immersion for leaders carrying big, complex soul missions. And you just feel like nobody's got you in the size and nature and complexity. So, yeah, thank you for this opportunity to be here with you and discuss this massively important work. And I think it's so wonderful that today is actually the new moon in Aries. So there has never been a better day when there are 7 planets in Aries as well, all leading us forward as the divine, sacred, courageous, brave, sovereign individual that we all are.
Mm. Is there anything that people need to know about today and setting an intention or tuning in and finding some time or anything or just live your life?
Just live your life. Live your life. Make the decision. Be raw, be real, be uncomfortable. Make the decision. Go do it.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for being here today. As always, I like people to share if this is something you want to share and amplify, or in the comments, leave a comment, ask a question. Let's get the conversation going. Let's build community. Let's transform the world one person at a time. Sending you so much love. Bye.